For some context, my older brother is several years older than me. When we were children, our mother was one of those flighty hippie types who was raised wealthy but spent all her inheritance, then got cut off by my affluent grandparents. She never learned to manage her money. Every couple of months, my mother would come up with some crazy idea, like moving to Thailand to raise orangutans, or moving to Dubai and marrying a rich gentleman. We moved around a lot as kids. She's dabbled with minor cults, but thankfully nothing too serious. I think she's just deeply traumatized and trying to cope, and desperate for attention, no matter the type. Anyway, this is only relevant because I wanted to explain. My brother and I have always been close. In many ways, he was my only stability growing up, and there was definitely a lot of codependency there, and some resentment too. My mother is what people would call a boy mom, always making excuses for him, and this did him no favors. When he was in high school, he dated a girl who got him hooked on drugs. He was talented and very popular, but after that, he got expelled, lost his prestigious apprenticeship, and he fell into a spiral. He got a girl pregnant. At the time, I believed my mother when she said it was all the girlfriend's fault for trying to baby trap him. It was definitely not all her fault. They were only teenagers and being foolish. Fast forward a few years, I'm just about to start my final year of high school, and my brother is at rock bottom, and his most recent girlfriend just left him. He asks our mother and me to take in his 4-year-old son, which, given what our mother was like, means he was really asking me to raise him. And I did. My mother thankfully let him sleep in her room at night, but during the day, he was my responsibility. I dropped him off at daycare before school, often being late, but my teachers were incredibly tolerant. I honestly have no idea how I graduated at all. I didn't show up some days until lunch, and some days not at all. I only had a small group of really close friends who were really understanding. I'd pick up my nephew after school, and we'd all hang out together with the toddler. My peers just ignored all this, which honestly was probably for the best. There were a couple of weird looks because my nephew looked a lot like my ex, but I was so focused on my friends and my nephew that if there was any bullying, I didn't notice it. I was stressed out, but I was happy. I didn't even go to my graduation dinner because I couldn't find anyone to take care of the baby, as my mother was out of town with her boyfriend. At the time, my brother was trying to get his life back together and saw his son only on the weekends. My nephew used to regularly call me his mom. I always tried to correct him, but he did it so frequently, I don't think he understood. I was only his aunt. From the ages of 4 to almost 7, I raised my nephew. I completed my university degree, had a full-time job, and was responsible for my nephew. In some ways, this time was the happiest I've ever been, but also traumatic. Seeing how my brother's life was destroyed, I decided I wasn't ever going to have kids of my own and would never date anyone with an addiction. When my nephew was almost 7, my brother decided to take him back. He had a new girlfriend who wanted to play happy families, basically wanting to not work and just look after the kid on my brother's dime. I was gutted, but kind of relieved. I was 20, and I wanted to have fun with my friends. Most of them had already left our old hometown by then, and I was getting pretty lonely, only having 1 or 2 left. It was hard. At first, it was good having my quiet existence back, having time to myself, but I missed the baby a lot, and seeing my brother every weekend, too. Now, the most I'd see them is if my brother needed a babysitter, which wasn't very often. Fast forward a couple of years again. My brother's girlfriend has found a new sugar daddy and left him. He's devastated. I don't know why, considering he was cheating on her, but by this point, our relationship was pretty strained. He'd stopped trying to get clean and couldn't keep a stable job. He asked me to take my nephew in again. I wasn't sure how long for, but I was willing. I'd noticed before, but now it was really obvious how messed up my nephew was. My nephew didn't seem to know that his ex wasn't his biological mother, was very naughty and spoiled. I tried to be understanding and give him stability, but he only ever wanted his dad. He would cry and act out and destroy things. It was hard, and I was heartbroken because I couldn't understand where my sweet boy had gone, and trying to support my brother at the same time when my nephew was with his grandmother. When the cheating girlfriend came back, my nephew was picked up, and it all went back to how it was. I was alone, feeling like I was just waiting for my brother and nephew to call, stuck with an emotionally manipulative mother who would do or say anything for attention. I decided to move states not long after. I spoke to my brother maybe a couple of times a year, and my nephew only on birthdays or Christmas. He didn't remember me after a few years. My brother, who is on the spectrum and honestly, I think has a very reduced ability to feel emotions, says a few concerning things throughout the years. Like when my nephew brought a weapon to school and got suspended, steals, lies, and can't be trusted around animals. He wouldn't take him to therapy when I suggested it and didn't seem to think it was an issue. I'm on the spectrum too, and while emotions can be hard, this is something else. My nephew is now 18, and he messages me out of the blue and says he misses me. He wants me to help him pay to move states and come live with me. I'm in my early 30s, have a retail business, a one-bedroom apartment, and a cat. I work 10 hours a day, have no friends close by, and haven't dated anyone since my late 20s. I have actually just recently started thinking about dating again if I want to find a husband sometime this century. I've hardly spoken to my nephew in years, and I highly doubt he remembers me at all. I haven't even visited since I moved away. My mother and brother think I should let him move in, but I don't want to give up my quiet life again. Honestly, I'm just tired of cleaning up after them and want to be left alone. How do I tell them? Now for an update. Thank you to everyone who gave advice and asked how I'm doing. Thank you especially to those who have had similar experiences and the kind people particularly worried for my cat. Be assured, I am definitely not taking my nephew in. I will tell him no, but be clear that I am only a phone call away if he wants someone to talk to. A comment suggested my family may want me to take my brother's new baby in, given there's some tension there, and I was in a bit of a panic trying to figure out how I would even look after a baby with my current schedule before I snapped out of it. I like kids, but no, I don't want to raise this one only for them to be taken away again. If they insist, I'll ask that they test paternity, which will create its own chaos, but it's better to know. I mentioned in a comment, I'm not sure if my eldest nephew is my brother's. He looks nothing like anyone on our side of the family, but by the time the biological mother left, we were all attached to the baby, so I don't think it matters. I think it would break my brother and my nephew if it was negative, though. I will update again if something changes. Now I just need to tell them, thank you all for your support and reassuring me that I am doing the right thing. Now for another update. You were right. When I stated I don't have the space for him here, my brother said I should move back home so the boys aren't separated and my youngest nephew doesn't grow up not knowing his older brother. He has been insisting for years that I should come home for Christmas and birthdays, but I work every day but Sundays and Christmas, so I haven't been back since I moved states. I am so confused. It's like he is using my nephew as a lure. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. That is a horrible story. I'm sorry you were taken advantage of. I hope you can find some peace in the fact that you did the best you could for a child in need at a huge sacrifice to yourself. But at 18, he is an adult, and you should do the best thing for yourself 100%. Have that conversation with him and tell him you can't, and if you choose to support him, you certainly can do that without him living with you or even near you. Early 30s is a great point in life. Live it as best you can, and you certainly don't owe any explanation to your family. Comment 2. To your nephew, I would say that you love him and hope he is well, but you will not be paying for anything and that he cannot live with you. To your brother and mother, tell them what you wrote here. While you love your nephew, you haven't seen him in years, and the only time you're asked to be involved is when they need something from you. You are not willing to upend your life and care for your nephew yet again because his parents are not making the choice to be good people or good parents. Now, for the update. My brother called me the next day, sounding desperate. He asked if I could reconsider, saying he was trying to get his life together. I told him I couldn't just change my life again. Family members started messaging me, pressuring me to help my brother. My mom texted saying it was my duty to take care of family. I ignored the messages and focused on my work. I got a call from my nephew asking if I could at least meet him. I agreed to meet him at a local diner where I used to take him when he was younger. He looked older than I remembered, tall and quiet. He talked about wanting to come live with me and his dad's struggles. I listened, trying to give some advice. He said he felt like a burden to his dad and wanted stability. I went home and found a message from my brother saying he was going to a rehab facility. I decided to check his social media and saw a picture of him with a bottle in hand at a party. This added to my frustration. He clearly wasn't even trying. A couple of days later, my mom invited me over for dinner, wanting to talk about family stuff. I arrived to find my brother there, looking messy. He made a scene, saying I was selfish for not helping him and his son. I pointed out that he was partying instead of focusing on his son. The argument got worse, and my mom sided with him, saying I should be more forgiving. A few days later, I got a message from my nephew saying his dad was missing. I called my brother's phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I drove to his house, worried, and found the door unlocked. Inside, there were bottles everywhere and no sign of my brother. I called my nephew and told him to come over. He arrived, looking scared, and told me his dad had been gone for days. I decided to take matters into my own hands. I contacted a family friend who had connections to local services that could help. They agreed to check on my brother and try to find him. Meanwhile, I started getting my home ready for my nephew, just in case. I told my family about the situation, and they finally understood how serious it was. A week later, the family friend found my brother at a shelter. They brought him back home, and I confronted him about his behavior. He didn't take responsibility and blamed everyone else. I decided I was done with his excuses. I told him I would help my nephew, but would not be part of his chaos anymore. I made arrangements for my nephew to stay with me until things settled down. I set clear boundaries and told my brother he could only see his son if he got help. I felt like I was stuck in a loop, dealing with the same chaos over and over, and I just couldn't do it anymore. I was so done with his excuses and the same old promises of change that always ended up being lies. I know it's tough for my nephew, but I had to draw the line somewhere for my own sanity and for his future. I was relieved to take him in, but I wished it didn't have to be like this. Am I the idiot for telling my mom she's not the worst person on earth after she freaked out about my dad's new girlfriend? Let's start off with some context. My 16-year-old relationship with my parents, aged 48 and 50, is extremely complicated. They've been married and divorced to each other twice, if that paints a vague picture of what they think of each other. My father, throughout my life, has been presently absent, if that makes sense, and hurtful. He was physically hurtful when I was young, and now it's mostly emotional abuse, but he's been turning over a new leaf since he got a girlfriend, and Child Protective Services got involved, being nicer and everything, and it's been peacefully nice until this Thursday. My mother, throughout my life, has been present and supportive. She supported me through my father's behavior, helped me when I was suicidal about a year ago, and she's been the only real parent in my life. Until this Thursday, I thought I could trust her with anything, and I used to tell her absolutely everything. This Thursday, my brother, who is 17 years old, and I went to eat dinner at my father's house. My father told my brother and me that he and his new girlfriend have been getting more and more serious, and he'd like for us to meet her a bit more. We go to eat there once a week, and he basically just wants to invite his girlfriend along to eat with us occasionally so we can meet her more, which we agreed to because it didn't seem like a big deal. When we got home, one of the first things we did was tell our mom. Again, I tell her everything, and she immediately became sort of standoffish. I picked up on it and asked her what was wrong, but she kept brushing me off whenever I asked. I kept pushing and asking because she kept giving me weird looks from across the room. And then she finally started talking. She started saying how we see our dad as some form of hero and how he gets all the credit for raising us when she does everything. I want to clarify, I'm scared of my father half the time. I do not see him as a hero and how she's a horrible mother and we can go have fun with his new girlfriend. She kept telling me to have fun with my dad's new girlfriend and forget about her entirely, and then went on to say we hated her and how she is just the one who pays for everything, and how if we love our dad so much, we should just move in with him. Clarifying, my brother wasn't in the room for this, just me. She then started crying and fled to the balcony. My mother has yelled at me plenty, but never like that, so I went to fetch my brother. We both went downstairs to see what was up, because at this point, I still didn't really understand what was happening. She looked straight at me and said, "You, go upstairs, go away," which I did. She kept saying she was the worst person on earth, and how we should just go live with our father. I tried to take a shower, but she burst through the door to tell me to shower at my father's house. She ended it by slamming her door and telling us to leave her be, and that we'd be living at our father's house from now on. I spent the entire night confused, upset, and sick to my stomach, worried she'd actually kick me out. I was scared to go to sleep because I thought she'd barge in like she'd done with the shower and tell me to pack my stuff. I was terrified of her. I didn't know what she was going to do or how this would play out. I don't think I've ever been that scared of my mother before. Now for the problem and the reason I'm writing this post. I have no idea how to move on. I keep flinching and freezing whenever my mother slightly raises her voice. And it feels like I am not in a house with my mother anymore. I feel horrible for feeling like this because I know now she didn't mean it and she was drunk when she said it. But I'm terrified in my home right now. I'm looking for advice on how to regain trust in my mother and put this behind me. She's already moved on, and I want to do that as well. How do I let this go in the fastest way possible so we can get back to normal? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. OP, I think your mom is struggling to deal with the reality of your dad's abuse and how he gets to just walk away. This is even more of an issue if your mom has lost her family, either from alienation or if they cut her off. It is not uncommon for abusers to turn up the charm to level 10 after their victim leaves to sway the children and to paint their victim in a bad light for the courts, family, and new partners. This is not an excuse for your mom's behavior. It is a possible explanation. Your mom has lived with an hurtful man for years, and there is a very big possibility that she doesn't know how to deal with not being in protect and insulate mode and crisis mode. I'm not saying it is okay, and she 100% should be getting help for it. But do know it is a thing, and it is not an easy thing to deprogram. I also would suggest being wary of your father. He is in the stage of making his new partner happy, so who knows what he has said about all of his past hurtful behavior. He might not take too kindly to you and your siblings being honest about his abuse. Right now, your dad is a loose cannon, and he is trying to buy your silence, not love. Abusers do not change, not without serious help and a strong want to do so. Remember that, OP. I, like you, am the child of abuse. I'm now 33 and have started processing my trauma. It's not easy, and I unfortunately have lost my relationship with my mom because of how she handled my hurtful dad leaving. She became bitter and decided she didn't need help from anyone. She also decided that she could parent all by herself, which turned into her parenting like my hurtful father. But the biggest thing is that my mom refused to see that she wasn't the only one who was abused. My dad was awful to my mom, but he was just as bad to us kids too. I strongly suggest reading the book Why Does He Do That? By Lundy Bancroft. There is a free PDF version. It can help you understand your mom a bit more and also recognize your dad's abuse. I also suggest maybe asking your mom to go to family counseling with you. You, your brother, and your mom should all be in individual counseling. If you cannot afford it, call a domestic violence hotline and see if they have resources for it. Please do not be ashamed to ask for help. Shame is how abusers keep their power. Fight back and get help. Comment 2. I know this feels awful, but you might not be able to look at your mom the same way again. And that's okay and important. You may have just learned something important about your mom and your family relationships that you need to take seriously. Though you're still a kid, the book Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents may have some relevant advice for you on how to protect yourself and manage your expectations in relationships with unreliable or emotionally manipulative or hurtful parents. If you Google Z Library, you should be able to download an ebook version from there. I and several of my friends found it to be really useful and eye-opening. A lot of the advice was stuff I had to figure out the hard way myself, but having done so, I can say that the coping strategies they suggest are pretty effective. Now, for the update. The last time I posted, it was about how my relationship with my mom got messed up after an argument when I was excited about my dad getting serious with his girlfriend. So, now I'm back with an update. It's been like a few weeks since that argument, and yeah, it still kinda sucks. I'm still living at home, but it's really awkward. Like, you can feel the weirdness in the air. My mom doesn't talk to me much anymore, and she pretty much just goes to her room after work and stays there. When I try to talk to her, it feels like I'm walking on eggshells. I keep it really short and light, but it's just so forced. My brother is usually chill about everything. Like, he's the most laid-back person I know. But lately, he's been super anxious about our mom's moods. He keeps asking me if I've tried talking to her or if I know what's going on. And I'm just like, dude, I don't know, okay? It's not like she's talking to me. The other night, I overheard her on the phone. She was talking really quietly, and I couldn't hear everything, but I caught some bits. She was saying stuff like, "We need to talk, and I don't want to hurt anyone." I was like, okay, what is this about? It got me really curious. So the next day, I did something sneaky. I went through her phone. I know, it's not cool, but I had to know what was going on. So she was in the shower, and I checked her phone. I found texts from my dad's girlfriend about some family reunion they were planning. She was asking my mom to come so they could clear the air. I was like, oh no, not this again. So I tried to bring it up casually during dinner that night. I asked my mom if she planned on going to the reunion, and she looked super shocked. Like, her face just dropped. But she didn't say anything. I could tell she was caught off guard. After dinner, I found her sitting alone in the dark, just holding her phone. I asked her again if she was going, and if she was okay with my dad's girlfriend, but she snapped at me, saying it was none of my business. A couple of days later, I found out from my brother that she was planning to go to the reunion. He seemed really worried about it too. So now I was like, okay, I guess I'm going too, just to see how this all goes down. The day of the reunion came, and it was so awkward. My dad and his girlfriend were all smiles, acting like everything was just fine. But my mom was so distant. She just sat alone, sipping her drink, not making eye contact with anyone. I felt so bad for her. The girlfriend tried to talk to her, but my mom just brushed her off. I overheard my dad bragging to some guests about how much he'd changed, and I wanted to throw up. As the night went on, you could just feel the tension building. Finally, my mom snapped. She confronted my dad in front of everyone, saying he was just pretending to be a good parent while ignoring everything he put us through. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The argument escalated so much. It was a full-on shouting match in front of all these people. It felt so unreal, like I was watching a movie or something. Guests started staring, and I just wanted to crawl into a hole and disappear. After the fight, my mom stormed out, and I followed her outside. She was sitting on the curb, just shaking and not saying anything. I wanted to comfort her, but I didn't know what to say. Before we headed home, I saw my dad and his girlfriend arguing. She was crying, and he looked so embarrassed. Honestly, it kind of made me feel good to see him like that, even if it was just for a moment. So yeah, that's my update. Things are still really messed up, and I'm not sure where my relationship with my mom stands. But I'm just trying to be there for her as best as I can. Edit. My mom didn't go to the reunion for my dad. She went for herself. She said she needed closure, and it was the only way to get it. She felt better afterward. Am I the idiot for considering leaving my husband who thinks he's dying, even though he's not? Me, 35-year-old female, and my husband, 31-year-old male, have been together for 10 years, married for 6. He has obsessive-compulsive disorder, and for the last 8 months or so, he's completely convinced himself that he has Lou Gehrig's disease, which Stephen Hawking had. He spent thousands of dollars on emergency room visits, seen multiple doctors, and a neurologist who who have all said he doesn't have it and he doesn't have any symptoms of Lou Gehrig's disease, etc. But it's all he talks about, all he thinks about all day every day for the last 8 months. He goes to therapy once a week, and he's been on medication for his obsessive-compulsive disorder since he was about 8 years old. He recently switched to a new medication, which seemed like it was helping, but now he's back to the same habit. I try to act normal to keep our home life happy and functioning for our 2 kids, aged 14 and 4, but he brings a black cloud over everything. Tonight, we were out for a casual dinner, and he just wasn't talking to me, was on his phone, and just seemed so angry and dismissive of me every time I tried to start a conversation. So finally, I asked him why he just doesn't like me anymore. He said he does like me, but he hates being alive and hates everything in life. He said he hates even trying to talk to me because all he wants to talk about is Lou Gehrig's disease. And he knows I'm tired of hearing about it and having the same conversation about it. He said nothing in life brings him joy except our son, but that thinking of our son makes him sad because he knows he's going to be dead in a year due to Lou Gehrig's disease. I didn't really know how to reply to that. I've been living with him through this and through his obsessive-compulsive disorder, but I just don't know if I can do it anymore. I don't know if this marriage is even worth saving, because at this point, I feel like I've lost all love for him, and he's not even the same person he was 8 months ago. I keep hoping he'll snap out of it, but even then, I don't know if I can ever go back to how we were. And it wasn't all that great to begin with anyway. So my question is, do I keep trying to stick this out and help him through this, or do I focus on myself and my kids? To add, I can't reply directly to the comment, but someone said it was concerning that my husband was 16 and I was 20 when I got pregnant. Reading and math are fundamental skills, everyone. We've been together for 10 years. My daughter is 14 years old. She's not his biological child. I thought that was obvious, but apparently not to some people. Almost forgot. I'm locked from responding to any more comments for some reason, but thank you from the bottom of my heart to everyone who's replied. I'm reading them all. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. This is tough, as I just lost a family friend to amyotrophic lateral sclerosis last month. If your husband understood the progression of the disease, he would very quickly understand he does not have it. Honestly, I would recommend inpatient therapy for your husband. His obsessive-compulsive disorder, delusions, and paranoia are not under control. I am not a doctor, but this feels like suicidal ideation being pushed toward kind of a wish for a legitimate way to die. If he refuses inpatient, you may want to start getting your ducks in a row, just in case. If he is unwilling to change or address his mental health and it's affecting your kids, then you need to help the family that you can help first. Get your kids away from this. Comment 2. My mother was a hypochondriac, and my childhood memories are full of emergency room visits, her always being out of work, and my dad always being so alone and stressed. I grew up with a very bizarre view of the healthcare system because I was in and around hospitals and doctors so much. I still often don't take health issues seriously because my mom was always so sick, but ended up being fine every single time. It drove my dad to alcoholism and an early death, and now, as an adult, I have no relationship with my mother, and she has never gotten the help she needs for whatever mental health issues she has. Now, for the update. I'm back with an update, and wow, it's been a ride. So about a month after my last update, my husband hits me with some shocking news during dinner. We're literally sitting there, trying to enjoy a meal, and he texts me that he needs space. Like, what? We're supposed to be a family, and he's texting me about needing space at the dinner table? I didn't know how to react. I just went silent and kept eating. He didn't even notice, just stared at his phone, and I could see the same old dread creeping up on his face. I knew he was still in the same bad place he had been for the last year, but I really thought we had made some progress. I guess I was wrong. Anyway, our son's birthday party was coming up, and I really wanted to keep things as normal as possible for the kids. I just didn't want them to feel the change in the household, you know? So I put on my best smile and asked my husband if he would be there. He just grunted a yes, and that was that. The day of the party, he shows up, but he's so distant and uninterested. I swear, he didn't even look at our son when he came downstairs to see the balloons and cake. He was just staring at his phone the whole time. Ugh, it was so annoying. During the party, things just got weirder. Out of nowhere, he tells me he needs a moment alone and leaves the room. I go looking for him and find him in the backyard, just sitting on the swing and staring blankly at the ground. I try to talk to him, but he brushes me off, saying he's fine. But I could tell he wasn't. He had this look in his eyes like he was a million miles away. I also noticed he had been texting someone a lot, and it definitely wasn't about the kids. Like, who are you texting so much that you can't even acknowledge your son's birthday? A week later, I get this random text from an unknown number asking if I'm okay. I don't know why, but it makes me feel really uneasy. So I ask my husband about it, and he just shrugs it off as spam. I don't know why, but I decided to check our shared family calendar. And guess what? I see all these entries for therapy that he hadn't mentioned to me. I mean, what the hell? I go to him about it, and he gets all defensive, insisting he's just trying to get better. But is he? Because it sure doesn't feel like it. We went to my parents' house for dinner one night, and he was just as distracted as ever. My mom even whispers to me, asking if I'm okay because he seems so withdrawn. Like, thanks, Mom, I'm aware. He suddenly leaves the table, saying he needs to make a call, and I just can't take it anymore. I follow him outside, and he's on the phone, speaking in hushed tones. I know it's wrong, but I just can't help but feel like something's off. A few days later, while I think I'm asleep, I overhear him on the phone talking to someone. He's saying stuff like wanting to find happiness again and not feeling guilty about it. I don't even know what that means, but it can't be good. So, I decide to confront him, and I ask him about the calls and the texts. He admits he's been talking to some support group, but the whole thing just feels so evasive. Then, while I'm cleaning the attic, I find this unopened letter addressed to him from a therapist. The letter talks about his ongoing struggles and urges him to be honest with his family. I was so upset. I confront him again, and this time he finally admits that he's been considering separation. I feel like I've been punched in the gut. Easter rolled around, and we're at a family gathering when I overhear him talking to my sister about wanting to travel alone. I am so furious at this point. I really want him to see what life without me is like, so I come up with this plan. I start planning a weekend getaway for myself and the kids, just to get away from all the drama for a bit. I tell my husband about it, and he looks surprised and a little panicked. It's like he's finally realizing I'm serious about leaving. I leave him a note saying I need some time to think about our future. The weekend away was actually really refreshing. The kids and I had a blast, and it was nice not to feel all that tension in the air. When I came home, he was waiting for me, looking all anxious and slightly lost. I can't even explain how I felt at that moment. It was like I had taken back some control, and it felt good. We talked things over, and he agreed that we should seek couples counseling together. His reaction to my getaway has definitely been a turning point for us. I don't know where we're headed, but for the first time in a long time, I feel like there's a bit of hope. Edit. It's hard to summarize everything in a short update, but I'll do my best. I didn't mention that we've been married for 11 years, and we have a 3-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old son. When I confronted him about the letter I found, it turned out that he had spoken to someone who suggested he separate from me. He got a lot of support for that idea, and that's why he was so distant. He assured me that he never wanted to go through with it, but he needed time to figure things out. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.